Hello and welcome to My Voice podcast. I'm Alex Wilkinson, a sport and exercise psychology student from Loughborough University. I'm currently on an internship with Sport and Communities, who are a community development organisation that supports all members of the community, from young to old, across a broad spectrum of needs. This podcast is part of the My Voice project, a national community lottery funded programme that helps to give young people a voice in their community and a platform for creating change and social action. Thank you for taking the time to join me, and welcome to My Voice podcast.
Hello and welcome to My Voice podcast. Today's podcast, we're going to be discussing superstitions in sport and how superstitions play a major role in preparing for all competitions and in training. Today's guests, I welcome back Dave Smith and Ed. A warm welcome to you both. How are you?
Morning. How you doing, Alex?
I'm very well, thank you. It's been a few weeks since you were last on. You came on for our last sports podcast, which I believe was sort of in the middle of lockdown. So it's good to have you back on and discussing.
Yeah, it's to do with performance in sport, something like that.
I think it was performance in sport in the middle of lockdown. So we've done quite a few more weeks of podcasts since then. And Ed, you've been busy doing your own podcast yourself, so thank you for taking the time to join us. It's appreciated that you both coming on to talk. As I mentioned, superstitions in sport, they're a very common tool to actually get ready and get in the zone for competition. And everybody differs in what they have for a superstitious ritual, whatever it be, from a touch, an action, an object. But a huge majority of professional athletes actually have them. And often they pose no real physical benefit, but it's a mental thing that can be used. And it's a very fine difference to win huge competitions. And these superstitions and rituals can sometimes be the difference to boost confidence and performance, which may lead to that win. So I'm wondering, first of all, when you two were competing, did you have any particular rituals in your pre-routine or in the days building up to your competitions? Did you have any rituals or superstitions that you used to carry out?
Leading into competitions, depending on the competition, it wouldn't be a ritual, it'd be more like a taper. Mm-hmm. And then part of that, it's all predetermined what you're doing on what day. There would be no rituals. You'd think, depending on what sport, whether you're doing a sport where you have to get weighed in, so then you have to think about diet and things like that. There was no real rituals. You're just conscious of all the different elements of performance. But a lot of it was also on the day. Some people would say rituals, some would say mental preparation. I remember when I was a triple jumper, the visualization process took place before each jump. So to me, I don't know, maybe some would say they're superstitions, but others it's just more mental preparation and going through in your mind what was about to take place and how to perform it, really.
Yeah, no, I think with the mental rehearsal and visualization, things like that, that'd definitely be more sports psychology based, and it's been proven to help. But superstitions, there's a former world champion rower, Annie Vernon, I think her name was, and she had a water-based superstition where before every race she'd pour a bottle of water on both of her oars before starting the race. Now, this obviously wouldn't help her race at all, but the superstition of pouring the water was a good luck charm. It helped give her a little boost. Maybe it was part of her routine that said, when I pour the water on each oar, that's a green light. I'm now in the zone and I'm ready to compete. And sometimes that's what the athlete needs. I remember when I was competing, I lined up my cartridges just before my shot. And I did this every time. And that wasn't so much a superstition, it was more of a routine, but they didn't have to be lined up. It didn't help me in any way apart from giving a green light in terms of this is now when you're ready to compete. And it's competition time. So sometimes it's it's the little things, isn't it? And they build up a bigger picture. I don't know about you, Ed. In badminton, when you were competing, you would have had a routine of some sort. Did you have any superstitions built into the routine, or when you were getting ready in the mornings, did you get ready in a certain way?
No, there was a funny one though. I'd have to wear not matching kit, but like I think there's a big emphasis on appearance and feeling comfortable before you're going out to performing yourself. One big thing is I always had to have a shower before I competed or played. And then that was my sort of, I'm ready. And for some reason in my head, because I used to get quite a lot of injuries, for some reason in my head that would calm me down and put in my mind that I wasn't going to suffer any injuries during the game or competition. So that was one thing. Another thing was you had something called like a heavy racket. So that would like make the racket you played with feel a lot lighter and be able to just build your wrist strength up and forearm strength. So before a match and competition, I would play a few rallies with a heavy racket. And then also, for some reason, I would put a lot of emphasis on the first point as well. And a lot of that is mindset. So not really superstition, but that if I won the first point, it would relax me and put my mind in the right place to continue like performing well. If I often had a bad first rally, the rest of the game would like almost follow suit. So that was a big one for me. Yeah.
It's interesting though that you were saying about that superstition, because loads of people feel comfortable in what they wear, and they have to wear a certain item of clothing. I think it was Serena Williams that had, she had to wear the same fluffy socks at the bottom, or they were like a leg warmer. And every day that Tiger Woods competes, the last day of the competition, he always competes in red. So that's why we always see him, his famous videos, he's in a red polo.
Yeah.
And he felt comfortable playing in that, and that's what one of his superstitions was. He associated winning with red, and that was his good luck, and that's what he needed for the final day. And they range so much, because some people have lucky charms, don't they? You'll see them before athletics. Athletics, I think, is rife for superstitions. And I don't know whether it's because the margin for error is so small and there's so much competition between athletes that maybe athletes try and find the smallest bit of advantage, or end up developing these rituals because it is so competitive. And you'll often see them either touch the blocks or kiss the ground or kiss a pendulum or anything it is.
Yeah, some of that's religious based though, isn't it?
Yes,
like wearing a cross, and they say a prayer before racing. I know there was an interview with Michael Johnson, and he said before an Olympic final, so you go into a holding room, the 8 of you, and one of the guys in the final wanted to lead them in a prayer, and that was his superstition. That was his thing. This guy had to say a prayer, and he wanted everyone to join in. So I guess the religious element comes into it now. Is that superstition, or is that just your faith? I don't know the difference.
No, it's a very, very close difference. And even as footballers, Liverpool walk out and they touch "This is Anfield" sign, and that's nothing to do with religion, but that's a repetitive thing that they do each game as a superstition. But in the sports world, there's so much superstition. I mean, what do you think the action of the ritual or the superstition really does for the performer? What do you think it did for you guys when you had a little superstition? What did it feel like it improved for you?
I remember I had a certain order in which I put my kit on. So when I was bobsleighing, I'd have a certain order, but that would fit in my warm-up. And so then, because you had to wear different things during the warm-up because of the temperatures, and as you got warmer, you'd have to manipulate. Then you'd go in, put your race kit on, then put your cold kit back on, and there'd be a certain order to things. Some would say it's a bit of a ritual, but it's depends on the temperatures outside in which you change. We spoke earlier. I said I used to put my right shoe on first, then I switched to my left on purpose just to make it, make me feel like I didn't have any kind of superstitions. And then I don't really even think about what order I put my shoes on now. So no, I think a lot of it depends on warm-up protocol as well, and what it is you're competing at.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting. Sorry, Alex. I don't know how many bad performances it can take to disturb your beliefs within that superstition or ritual. So I went through a phase of like having like a lucky charm or doing something, but then, if I'd played bad, I'd just be like, well, that didn't work then, and then I'd just scrap it. But so I imagine like Liverpool took, like you say, a lot of the rituals and superstitions don't actually scientifically affect performance, but it's all in the mindset behind it. So I just think it's interesting how many times Tiger Woods, for example, would have to lose on the last day wearing red before he changed that superstition.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know, but it's interesting.
It is interesting because every athlete, they'll get to one point and they think, oh, this is rubbish, it's not working for me, I don't believe it, blah, blah, and they might drop it. But I think through really strong superstitions, people will always keep them up. And I was having a think, and I was thinking about amateur sport, and in amateur sport, whether they have the same superstitions or whether at what stage do you develop your superstitions? When you're an amateur and you're competing, do you have that superstition then, and you make it part of a routine, or do you create a routine and then the superstitions come later on?
I remember was a couple of athletes, a guy called Dwayne Ladejo, who was sponsored by Puma, had to have a new set of spikes every race.
Mm.
But you're like, well, you're sponsored, so it's different. Yeah. David Beckham used to play in a new set of boots every game.
Yeah.
And so you think, well, an amateur can't afford £120 every game, can they, for a new set of boots? So, yeah, that's a different story again, though, isn't it?
It is. And then on the other side of that, Jack Grealish, when he was playing for Aston Villa in the year that they were trying to get promoted into Premier League, he played in his lucky boots. Now his lucky boots were absolutely shredded, and they had a hole where his toe was sticking out from. They were all ripped on the side, and these lucky boots were actually just falling apart. But that's what he played in. That's what he loved playing in. And he said he was going to retire the boots after they won that championship playoff, and they did win, and he retired them and came up into Premier League and didn't wear the boots again. But it didn't help his performance by wearing those boots. It might have hindered him in some way if there's not the same support there, or if he got stood on. Like they were really ripped up. But he felt comfortable playing in those shoes, and just like Tiger Woods felt comfortable in his red polo. And Ed, you feel comfortable in your matching badminton gear.
I know people as well, if they're wearing, like, say, Nike shoes, they have to wear Nike tops, Nike shorts, Nike, socks. Everything has to match. Or I had a friend, he was a 400 hurdler, and he liked a certain pair of spikes, and Adidas, and they stopped making them. But anywhere he was in the world, he would try and then find a pair of those spikes. And if he got a pair, he'd buy as many pairs as he could. I mean, and he was using them for years. And you think, well, hold on, technology's moved on. Why aren't you using modern day spikes?
Yeah.
Just because I think he qualified for his first Olympics in those spikes. So then he thought they were amazing, and he had to always wear them.
I think people get stuck in a rut, don't they? They get stuck with what they're comfortable with and what they're used to. And if you know it's worked once, why won't it work again?
Saying that, the same guy, I just remembering now, he used to be the captain of the athletics club, the manager of the athletics team I used to compete for. And he told me he used to pack his bag 3 times the night before. He'd pack it, unpack it, it'd have to be done 3 times. And then on the day, he'd unpack it and repack it again.
Yeah, that comes to a point where it gets tiring then, doesn't it?
Well, he said to me, don't you do anything? I said, no, I put it in the bag and it's in the bag. and that's it. I mean, if no one touches your kit bag, then you're all right, aren't you?
Yeah, but I suppose you, maybe hearing that, you have a lot more, maybe less anxieties going into the competition or less worries. If he packed his bag once and tried to go to sleep, he's lying awake in that bed thinking, did I put everything in the bag? I've got my spikes in there, I've got my shoes in there, I've got my whatever it is in the bag.
Yeah.
He needed to pack that 3 times to ease any anxieties and make himself feel calmer the night before going to bed. And I remember reading about a man and a wife, and they were both athletes and they were competing. And like the week leading up to, the day before and a few days before, they wouldn't share the room or anything. They'd sleep in separate bedrooms. And the wife said he'd just speak to himself in the mirror, and that was part of his preparation. But everybody prepares in a different way, and you never know what works for you. So people are always trying new things. But then once something does work, sport's all about consistency, and you want results again and again and again. And I think that's why athletes do end up repeating sometimes the most bizarre actions and superstitions. It's interesting, because if we were doing that in normal everyday life, it could be looked at as different mental disorders, especially in terms of like OCD, some of the compulsive behaviours that people do before and getting ready for the competitions. I
know certain sports, where the OCD is strong, and they come out of sport, and there's a lot of mental health problems there. I know gymnastics is rife for it, because it's based on appearance, presentation, and execution, and a lot of the athletes there come away with severe OCD issues and things like that.
Yeah, you can understand why as well, because it's such a dramatic change once you come out. But I don't know of anybody having superstitions in work, or do people have superstitions before a big meeting? I don't know the answer to that, but I imagine some people might. They might only turn their coffee anti-clockwise, or something like that before a big meeting. But they go on and on. But the preparations are essential in sport, and a lot of people say they build the confidence they need. But if it's a ritual and you forget about something, say if you forget maybe to complete one of the behaviours, or let's say if your lucky charm is lost, whatever it may be, does that then affect your performance?
Well, I remember, the World Cup last year, the Rugby World Cup, England, South Africa,
mm-hmm.
where England beat New Zealand in the semi-final.
Yeah.
Eddie Jones intentionally broke their routine and got them to the stadium 45 minutes late.
Right.
He also did the same against Ireland away in the Six Nations, which both games England lost. And everyone's like, hold on, we did so well previously against New Zealand. Why have you broken the routine? And there's a famous quote from the South African captain who said, when they're doing the coin toss, he looked at the England captain and he said he didn't know where he was, what end he should have been at, what end they're warming up, and they were just flapping. And he said, straight away, I knew that they weren't ready.
So they were late.
And Eddie Jones did it on purpose. He's made them wait an extra 45 minutes at the hotel so they got to the stadium later.
So why did he do that then, if it had such a negative effect?
Well, he tries to do it to try and keep them on their toes. Eddie Jones is known for mixing it up.
Okay.
Just to try and keep them on their toes, so there is no routine, so they're always ready. And 2 times he's done it, they've lost. For me, as an athlete, if I'd have done that well against New Zealand, I would have wanted the exact same routine going into the final against South Africa.
Yeah.
No change Whatsoever.
Especially for the biggest game of your life in terms of the stage.
And for him turn around and remove 45 minutes where you're in the changing room, you can sort yourself out, get everything in place, take your time, for that just to go and everything be a rush. No, I wouldn't have been a fan. I'd have told him what I thought about it as well, to be fair, because, if it disrupts each athlete, then you've got a whole squad of unhappy athletes.
Yeah, and for something that requires such fluid timing and movement and such a happy feeling and a settled feeling within yourself to compete at that level, under the spotlights like that, you'd want it to be exactly the same. So that's not so much superstition, but changing a total plan, changing a total routine. Very hard.
But he doesn't tell people, he just does it on the day, and that's it. And he just does it, and you have to sit there and just smile and nod. But for me, when you think about rugby, when you're in a rugby changing room and you think, well, you got 15 guys plus all the subs, so you got maybe 25 people in the changing room plus staff.
Yeah.
It's a busy room, and you think about how much prep goes in. If you think like the pads they have to put on, the taping they do, these processes can take time. And with taping, if you get it wrong, you have to start again. If it doesn't feel right, you have to start again. And if they're carrying injuries, on the tables with the physios, pre-game massage, if you've got 15 guys who all need to be on the table, you need that time preparation, and that just got taken away. And to me, it comes across as unprofessional, to be honest, not taking into consideration these things. But
everyone wasn't like 5 minutes, was it? 45 minutes is a long time.
Yeah. That's what I was just having to think then. If I was 45 minutes late to a day's shooting competition, well, you've lost your whole time getting ready, like to get into the right mindset for it, haven't you?
I mean, if you think about 45 minutes and you think how long your warm-up is, and when you go into your warm-up, you go into then essentially cruise control, because you go into your comfortable space where you start building up for competition, and you just do the same routine. If that went, I remember when I was a triple jumper, there was a big crash on the motorway. I got to the competition. This was, I think, county champs for the schools, and we went as a school. Got there, I had 5 minutes to do a warm-up. I mean, 5 minutes in triple jumping, that's not even long enough to mark your run-up out. And at this point, my warm-up was the best part of 45 minutes. And I was going to pull out, actually, because I thought, what's the point in injuring myself? But the PE teacher made me compete, and I was just like, this is stupid. Come away, worst competition of the season, and he just blamed my mindset. I said, well, hold on, I haven't even done a warm-up. I said, it's nothing to do with mindset. It's, how would you expect someone to compete when you won't even allow them time to warm up? It doesn't work, does it?
No, it doesn't.
I think there's a difference there, though, isn't there, with the 45 minutes, that you're affecting more than just your rituals and superstitions. It is the warm-up and getting prepared.
Well, did you see, was it England versus Ireland back in Martin Johnson days? To break the Irish superstition, they went and lined up on the other side of the field for the national anthems. So it's usually one side on the left, one side on the right. The England team went and took the home nation side, and then Ireland went and queued up, lined up on the other side to make sure they were still on the left-hand side. But also you could say the same thing about the haka, when England went and pushed up on them. It's happened a couple of times. French have done it and disrupted the haka, and they've had to stop it, and now they've enforced rules where you can't get close. So I don't, like, for me, I wouldn't want to just stand there and let them dance in front of me. I'd want to go and get nice and close to them and be up and personal. So
every now and then teams understand what makes another team tick and what makes them feel comfortable. And Liverpool always play and shoot towards the cop in the second half. So you'll see teams switch it around every now and then. If they win the toss, a lot of them will give respect and let them. But every now and then, a European team or something like that, they'll know, and they'll make sure that they're shooting at the cop first half. And teams use those little tricks, I suppose, to really benefit them. And as you were saying earlier, if England rugby turned up 45 minutes late, some of those athletes wouldn't have had the right preparation, but some of them might have not gone through those rituals either, or their superstitions might have been rushed and they might have not felt confident. But I do overall think if you forget or you don't carry out those superstitions, that you would lose confidence, and that could be the very fine difference between, because in sport you're constantly making quick decisions, so you need to be so on the ball and so confident in everything that you see the play or you see what's happening in front of you before it actually happens.
I think it makes it. I'd be interested to know how many professional athletes actually have a ritual for either settling anxiety before a competition or to give them that extra edge as well. So the reasons behind why they do it.
Because I never think that I'm going to have bad luck if I don't do it. I just think I've got to do it to perform well. I've got to do it to shoot well. But I don't think, if I don't do that, then I'm going to have bad luck, or if I don't do that, then something bad's going to happen. I think of it, if I do this, then something good will happen. And I think for some people, depending on how they're feeling, it could be one way or the other. If I don't put my left shoe on first, something bad will happen, rather than I'm putting my left shoe on first because I know I'm going to run a good race, or I know this is how I get ready, this is how I feel confident. So it's little things like that. And there's so much to understand more about superstitions as well.
Yeah, I guess it's all in the mindset, isn't it? And like you say, it's scientifically not going to improve your game through performance, but in the mindset, it might. Well, it's proven that it can do that. So
yeah, it can really be the difference. Well, I'd just like to say thank you for coming on and speaking with me today. We got to the end of the podcast, but it was lovely to have this conversation with you both. So thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Alex, for having me.
Cheers, Alex.
Hopefully, I'll have another podcast with you both soon.